Okay, so we are live. Everyone is joining in. For the folks that have joined in, hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on tariff threats and trade uncertainty. I'm Jigar Kanjani, Professional Development Coordinator at Supply Chain Canada West, and I'm excited to guide you through today's conversation. While everyone is joining in, we'll start by sharing a quick highlight from our supply chain sustainability event that happened in Vancouver last month, where we brought together supply chain professionals to discuss key challenges. So here's the video.
Really excited to be here to kick off our first in-person event this year. And it was so important for us to talk and focus on the topic of sustainability and the intersection with
Yeah, I was quite excited when
supply chain management. For many of you who are in supply
Jigar,
chain,
we're not seeing
we
the
all
video or the
recognize
sound
the
from the video
importance
at the
of supply
moment.
chain
I don't know
to
whether
the
there's something on your
strategic
end.
outcomes of an organization. And for those that are in sustainability, you recognize the importance of sustainability to our overall communities and how we affect the communities around us and the environment around us as well. And where I've seen us do some amazing work is when we're able to bring these two together, because supply chains can truly drive sustainability performance.
Okay, there were a couple of pauses in there, but the event went in very great. Hopefully you got some glimpse of the Vancouver event. It was a great reminder that Supply Chain Canada, we don't just talk theory, we focus practical solution, building connections across sectors to help supply chain professionals navigate challenges, whether it's in-person events like Vancouver or webinars like today's. Our goal is always to empower you with actionable insights to drive your success. I see everyone has started to join and settle in. Great to see so many of you are here today. For those just joining in, welcome again to today's webinar on tariff threats and trade uncertainty. Before we begin, a quick few housekeeping notes to ensure everyone makes the most of today's session. The webinar is being recorded and all registrants will receive the recording and presentation slide afterwards. So no need to take notes unless you want to. If you are an Alberta member, your credits will be automatically added. If you are from outside of Alberta, please remember to manually add your credits in your Supply Chain Canada portal account. All attendees are in listen-only mode to avoid background noise. However, please feel free to make the most out of the Q&A feature that we have here on Zoom. Feel free to submit your questions anytime during the webinar, and we'll make sure to answer those towards the end of the session. I believe that covers the logistic. Now let's dive into why we are here today. The trade disruptions are nothing new, but the pace and unpredictability we are seeing today are on another level. Just yesterday, March 4th, new tariffs between Canada and the US took effect. The Canada's response in kind came along with. These tariffs impact everything from manufacturing and chemicals to agriculture and retail, causing sudden spike and supply chain reevaluations needed. Many companies are facing 25% higher cost on certain imports overnight, forcing quick decisions on sourcing, contracts, and pricing. In fact, a recent survey showed 80% of business leaders expect their operations directly impacted by these trade shifts. We'll explore how leaders are adapting procurement strategies, mitigating risk, and communicating these changes both internally and externally. For that, we have two exceptional leaders with us to guide this conversation. We are fortunate to have two highly respected leaders from Supply Chain Leaders Council, Sasha Sharjeev and Cindy Q. Our first speaker is Sasha, Director of Technical Corporate Procurement at Nova Chemicals. Sasha brings 20 years of global supply chain experience covering operations, procurement, and major capital process across multiple jurisdictions. Known for commercial acumen and technology-driven approach, Sasha leads Nova's indirect procurement activities, driving efficiency and innovation through digital tools and data-driven strategies. Following Sasha, we'll hear from Cindy, Director of Procurement and Contract Services at Edmonton Police Services. Cindy established and leads EPS's procurement function, modernizing procurement processes to balance operations readiness, officer safety, and fiscal accountability. Together, Sasha and Cindy offers complementary perspective from private and public sectors, giving you a well-rounded view of how different organizations are responding to the same challenge. Sasha, let's kick things off and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Jigar. And good morning, good afternoon for everyone. And yeah, looking forward to the session, looking forward to sharing some of our perspectives on this really hot topic. But first, let me set up a little bit of a context and a background, picking up from Jigar. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this has dominated the news, and I don't have to go into a lot of explaining, really. I'm sure everyone is tracking this and everyone is closely following. But the recent changes with America First trade policy, tariffs across multiple sectors, and the whole unpredictability of the economic sort of policies have created this impact on various enterprises, but it has created a particular pressure and created a lot of work on many supply chain procurement teams as the business leaders are looking at all the ways to how to try to mitigate and minimize the impact of these shifting economic trade policies on their enterprises. There's been a number of interesting surveys, and I wanted to share with you some of the, again, perspectives from various industries. For example, according to the survey run by Gartner, if you look across in the US, about 15 to 20% of businesses are anticipating an impact, being impacted, heavily impacted, not just impacted, but heavily impacted by these tariffs. And another 25 to 30% saying moderate impact. If we look on the Canadian side, we don't have the numbers, but we can anticipate that it would be even higher numbers and even higher impact. The other important relevant point, according to information by McKinsey Consulting, they made a bit of an analysis of what would be the financial bottom line or EBITDA impact on various companies in various industries. And what they found that it ranges, but they see consistently that pretty much in every industry across the board, whether you are in energy or agriculture or in the consumer goods or products, there's an anticipated 2 to 7 to 10% impact on your EBITDA from this new tariffs coming in effect. And then there's always first objective, of course, is, hey, can we pass on these additional costs that some of the companies will have to pay? Interesting finding, another Gartner survey, is that on about 35% of the companies they surveyed said that there's very much limited ability for them to pass on the impact of these tariffs onto their customers, which in the flip side will put internal pressure on finding ways to offset the cost of these tariffs. And where many executives in the business will go, they will go to us, to procurement and supply chain professionals, in the search of trying to minimize those negative impacts. And therefore, we as procurement professionals will have to be ready, we'll have to anticipate, we'll have to adapt, we'll have to leverage all of our professional expertise and experience to help the enterprises to adapt to this. And this is what we want to do today through this webinar with Cindy and myself, is to share some of the strategies and hints and tips and what we're seeing as the sort of advanced ways of mitigating impact and procurement stepping in to help manage the negative impact. Next slide, Jigar, please. Yeah, so what we can anticipate from this is we already preparing for increase in procurement costs, both direct and indirect in manufacturing type of supply chains where I'm coming from. There's some supply chain disruption in terms of there's going to be logistical implications, warehousing implications, which we'll talk about later. And then in general, many companies will be redesigning their supply chains so that they can try to mitigate the tariffs as much as possible. And again, I'll finish this segment by just saying that the procurement teams will have to evaluate the upstream and downstream impacts of the tariffs and the risk associated with that. We'll have to do quite a bit of evaluation. But then based on that evaluation, there's some steps that they can take, which we will cover later in the seminar. So with that, I'll hand it over to Cindy. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Sasha, for setting the context for today's conversation. Really appreciate the opportunity to be invited here by Supply Chain Canada to share our sort of thoughts, but also from a practitioner standpoint, how are we responding, how are we leading, and how are we serving our organization through these very turbulent and volatile times. As you all know, President Trump took office on January 20, 2025. That was only about 45 days ago. Since he took office and his administration sort of begun the work under the new administration, there have been very clear words spoken, stated, and actions taken to assert control, dominance, and power. And this is done almost at all cost. So the consequences, as we have witnessed, felt, and responding to, is one that's creating a new reality for the economy, for practitioners, for politicians, policymakers, and everybody in our country. And that new reality is one that is contextualized by disruptions, threats, tensions, and chaos. And the consequence of that, obviously, is, we are seeing a new world of unpredictability, a world where diplomacy, rules of engagement, trade agreements, world governance, international orders and norms to be in a world, in an area where it's unpredictable and uncertain. So what does this mean? Next slide, please. What does this mean for supply chain procurement professionals, practitioners, and leaders? How do we respond, navigate, serve, and lead? And in my opinion, I think all of us are making incredible measures, and I have no doubt that we're taking all the strides that we can to ensure that we support our teams, that we support our organization, and that we do what we can in these turbulent times. What I like to offer you are some of my, experience and the journey that my team, and the organization, Edmonton Police Service, has undergone in a very short period of time. And this starts with some very, very simple recognition and reflection and realization that we have to come to. That is a simple approach. For example, Buy Canada sometimes isn't the solution for organization such as the Edmonton Police Service. In other words, what may feel good isn't necessarily in the best interest of the most prudent approach. So, for the Edmonton Police Service, we cannot simply say, let's find a substitute, let's find an option. We purchase ammunition, investigative technology, forensic technology, aircraft, military equipment, uniform, protective equipment, and many, many of these items that we procure and purchase are largely proprietary. They are exclusively distributed by many American vendors. And I'll be frank with you. It wasn't 2 weeks ago that I and my team were literally at Pearson Airport when that Delta plane hit the runway. We were there ready to fly south to the United States to visit a few major distributors to really better understand their capacity and how do we work with them to ensure that we equipped our 2,000 women and men who are putting their lives at risk. How do we ensure that we continue to equip them with uniforms, with protective equipment to ensure their safety, public safety, and to continue a really important mission, which is to ensure that Edmontonians are safe. So, in reflecting and in thinking through some of these challenges and difficulties, it's important for our supply chain as well as procurement professionals and leaders to think through from a perspective of balancing. There are a number of pain points for public procurement professionals. We are constantly challenged. We operate in a world where transparency, accountability, and compliance with trade agreement, with rules, with policy and procedures, that's the world that we operate in. However, these exacting demands for compliance are now remarkably set against some very serious challenges. Challenges in terms of how do we work with our business partners faster? How do we ensure that we find solutions for them? Sometimes substitution isn't an option because there's nowhere else to obtain these materials, these equipments, these uniforms, these proprietary technology. So it is not an afterthought to work with your business partner. And in fact, I would suggest to you, it is the most important aspect of everyday work for you and your procurement team right now is to work hand in hand with your business partner. And as a leader, really, this is a time where we have to recognize that we don't know all the answers, and we will not be able to know all the answers because of the uncertainties that are happening in the world. This is the time where we lean on our strengths as leaders, bring people together, act and operate and think from a strategic mindset, act and lean into our expertise as procurement experts, as supply chain expert, as compliant expert, lean into that and work as business partner with your stakeholders, with your operational areas, and work to empower your team. There are tons of opportunities out there for innovation. And when I talk about innovation, I am talking about day-to-day, creative, innovative problem solving that your team is at and can be at their best. So these are some things that I would suggest to you as your strengths. And when we think through what we need to do here, it is how do we position our team as procurement supply professionals to position our confidence, to position our voice, and position our leadership in face of challenging times, in face of reactionary, in face of threats, in face of constant volatility. And then to think about, it is not a time to think about, let's wait and see. Let's wait until things can go back to normal. Maybe, Mr. President of the American government will be open for a negotiation. All of that may be true, but what's also important is, how do we think strategically? How do we work with our team? How do we work with our stakeholder and our organization to think strategically? How do we make this a moment of opportunity? Next slide, please. And this is an opportunity to think through, how do we shore up perceived vulnerability within the procurement sector? How do we think through repositioning procurement and supply logistics as the organization's expert and trusted advisor and business partner? And this means thinking through small wins. Every day it's a small win. Every day it's a practical innovation worthy to be recognized, worthy to be elevated, and worthy to create a narrative that is aligned with a long-term resilient strategy. And we've got to work through our team. We've got to think through this as a way to enable our team members, lean into their strength, and lean into our leadership capacity to lead our organization. So those are basically the essence of what I'd like to share with you, the reflection and the thinking that I and my team and the entire senior leadership and organization within Edmonton Police have undergone in the last very short, but what seems like a really long time. I'd like to stop here and move to the next part, where we share with you some specific contextual tips, some strategies that we employed. And I want to preface it by saying this may or may not work for you. This is what we've done for our respective organization. However, we are here to engage, we're here to share, and we're here to work on behalf of our organization, our team, and our association. Back to you there, Jigar. So it looks like I'm also going up first. So I'll just be brief here. So the framework that is before you is one that I would submit to you to be of utter simplicity. Sometimes it is really critical that we simplify approaches and strategy. I'm not saying anything that I believe you don't already know or already practicing. The first and most important piece of this framework is to monitor. Learning from my policing counterpart and colleagues, this is something that they are so brilliant at doing. Intelligence gathering, factual gathering, investigation. And so we employed this directly. From day one, we've set up a small but expert team with all the relevant expertise, and we've been monitoring on a regular basis. The other thing that we've done is to ensure that we engage with senior leadership from the very get-go, either through briefing, through information item, or through communication across senior leadership. I am a firm believer in filling in gaps in communication. Whenever there's a gap in communication, people fill it in, and they tend to fill it in with negative narrative. And I'm being blunt with you. So what I am a firm believer in is, if there are opportunities to communicate to senior leadership, to the organization at large, be strategic, but do communicate. Put messaging there that are timely, that are relevant, and that are factual. And if possible, think through the kind of actions that you want the organization to think through and engage in, and put them out there. If you're looking for organization members from a public standpoint to work closely with your team and not wait till they have to buy something before they engage your team, say so. this is a fantastic time to reposition yourself because you have incentive. The second or the third quadrant of this framework is to start developing your strategy. There's never a better time to reposition yourself and think through, how do I build resilience? How do I build long-term strategy from sourcing, from a procuring, as well as supply logistic, inventory management standpoint? You've got incentive on your hands. You've got a very motivated team of professionals, and you have the entire organization, love it or hate it, they're listening to you. So use it and lean into it. And then finally, you have to take action, be it tactical, but make sure you are nimble and you're scalable. And take those action and then line them with your strategy, and then communicate. Communicate to your team, communicate to your organization, and start entrenching in those kind of strategic mindset with your organization. Here's the path forward. This is what action we will take. These are the outcomes that we believe we can achieve for the organization. And most importantly, we need you on our side. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So I won't belabor at this point because I want to leave time for Sasha for, he has tons of really, really fantastic tips from a private sector standpoint. And I actually want to take some notes from him. From a procurement perspective, I'm just going to highlight a few areas just for to contribute to your thinking and your thought as you are going through this turbulent time. The first piece of tips that I would suggest to you is to think through your procurement policy and practices. There are opportunities here to work very, very closely with your legal team, work very closely with your procurement expert, your policy expert. One very particular important piece of work that we've been doing is to review all of our trade agreements, so Canadian Free Trade Agreement, NUAPTA, any of those trade agreements that or all policy and procedures that are relevant right now, and then to look and leverage the exceptions provisions, the sole sourcing provision, but more importantly, to think really creatively and look at all the procurement chapters as a whole and really get into the intention of the chapter when you start thinking through how do you work with your business partner to procure or to substitute for goods and services. One particular chapter that I recommend you review with your legal counterpart includes, so for example, the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. Don't hesitate to look at provisions in Article 504 of the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, which talks about the scope of the chapter, but also paragraph 11 talks about the non-application. So when is that entire chapter not applicable? And there are tons of opportunities there that you can work through with your business partners, with your legal, to really develop a strategy to fully leverage these opportunities. Another piece is proactively engaging with your vendors. Here in EPS, we quickly restructure our procurement team where we have portfolio leads, and they are working directly with business partner, contacting vendors and talking about pricing. Can you guarantee the pricing? And if you can, are you willing to absorb the inflationary, the potential inflation, or are you willing to share the inflation? So these are conversations that are happening across the board for us, and we're taking a very proactive approach where this is concerned. Work with your customs agent. Our custom agent has been very, very, very good at helping us to navigate through some very, very technical requirements from what we import and the implication of what we import at this point in time. And then finally, if not most importantly, the repositioning and the advocacy piece. I want to leave with you this thought. when we reposition ourselves, it's not to say that we aren't already there. It's just an opportunity for us to not only act, but to talk as experts. We are procurement experts. We are supply chain experts, but we're also trusted advisors. We're also trusted business partners. So how do we act that way? How do we think that way? And how do we lead the organization in a way that shows we're there working hand in hand with them, where they're thinking about their business needs, but also the outcomes of what they need to go through. There will be impact financially, operationally. There will be changes in terms of how we deal with what we procure, who we procure with, when, what, why, and how. But this is the time where we've got to roll up our sleeves and we've got to work as trusted business partners. Sasha, over to you.
Thank you, Cindy. Great insights, and I'll build on these, but I'm going to take a little bit of a different perspective or a different angle onto this. So what you'll hear from me is going to be from the perspective of the private sector, but also from the perspective of your manufacturing type of supply chain scenarios, so where you have an S&OP, direct procurement, indirect procurement, logistics, and distribution. There are a number of things and a myriad of practices that different organizations are putting in play. And again, some of them may apply to your organization, may not. But let's just run through some of the best practices which we're seeing developing. And again, we're seeing this from the external information, external advice my organization is getting, but it's also some of the things which we putting in place in response to this in the manufacturing supply chain. So first of all, it all starts, as Cindy already mentioned, from the evaluation. So you need to assess the impact on the items that you either procuring or the items that you're distributing, and then start taking the appropriate actions from the perspective of, again, the products, the SKUs that you have, the SKUs that you buy, the SKUs you store, and again, the SKUs that you move around to your customers. You need to understand where's the impact. You need to understand what's impacted and what's not. You need to dive deep into the, again, tariff lists, for example, which have been put forward by Canadian government in terms of the wave 1 list, 30 billion impact, and then the second list they opened up yesterday for comments, and really sift through and understand from your SKUs and SKUs that you buy and the items that you manage, what's being impacted from which side. And after that, I think you need to start putting some actions in place. Even I'll take on this sort of the preemptive logistical stuff that we've done. So on the distribution side, many companies, and us including, there was this trend coming up to tariffs that we moved as much as we could to avoid tariffs up front. So we moved a bunch of finished product inventory from Canada, where we manufacture, to US, so that we can avoid tariffs as much as possible. And if you can still do it, right? Although the tariffs are in effect to some extent, but I think, again, the news today, there's some industries getting some reprieve and some temporary exemptions. Use it. Don't sit and waste this opportunity. But on the flip side, for example, for direct and indirect procurement, we did the same in collaboration with suppliers, where we said, look, hey, what's impacted from the again, items that we're typically procuring, and then we explored with them, pushing them to move the inventory, for example, into Canada, where we will be consuming it from the US, again, ahead of time. Then we started looking into other things which would relate to logistics and relate to, again, the distribution and other scenarios of how to avoid things. in some cases, if you shipping to US, but this is not the final destination, use the so-called free trade zone options as well. They're there, they're allowed under the legislation, and you can avoid the tariff on something that will be moved as a final product from the US, from Canada to US, and then you're going to be exporting from the US facility. So we've done that, and we expanded the use of free trade zones significantly, building capacity there. But the same way, the other way, right? If there are products that you are importing into Canada, which will not stay in Canada, seek, and you'll export it, seek opportunities to get the exemptions. And we're actually exploring this right now. There's Canadian duty relief program for the items which we know in our supply chain, like packaging, we importing from the US, we're going to package the goods, but then we're going to move it either back to the US or somewhere else. And that government program, the mechanism which exists, can allow companies like us to avoid paying these tariffs. So again, exploring every opportunity that you have to minimize. But the other thing I wanted to shift quickly is you need to prioritize. Not everything will be equally important, and this is again true for us. We've in the indirect procurement space, for example, which I'm managing. We've analyzed where the impacts will be, and came up with a pretty broad range. But we quickly zoomed in. Where's the biggest impact? And we identified really 2-3 categories where the impact is significant, and we're talking about a much bigger financial impact compared to everything else that we've seen in other categories. So we're zooming in there, and this is where we're putting majority of our effort. So what's the effort? What can you do once you've identified this? Hopefully you can hear me okay. Just got the message, my internet may be choppy. All good? All right. Just wrapping up, right? So what are the tactics also you can apply? So we've identified cases where there are products that we've been procuring in the US and importing to Canada. Why? Because historically that was the best commercial opportunity, right? That was the best commercial option for us. But with tariffs coming in, that's no longer a best commercial option. So we shifted to localize the sourcing in Canada for things that we can do there, and we can source from Canada, and exploring the alternatives and getting prices and getting quotes. And then there's a lot of work happening there. The other one is actually we came across a couple of cases where the suppliers that we have, where we see the impact from suppliers in the US to Canada, they're also our customers. So we are engaging in these conversations to say, look, we will be absorbing on the sell side. When we're selling to you, we'll be absorbing part of the tariff. Can you reciprocate and do something similar? And let's find a partnership solution rather than us just taking the supply away from you completely. Maybe there's some sort of a longer term partnership perspective that we can help each other. But I think that in many cases, we will be looking at other options. We will be looking at supply diversification. We will be looking at shifting supply, not just back to Canada and domestically where possible, but also exploring other countries like Mexico, where they will be hit as well, and there may be some capacity freeing up for them to supply to us. We will be looking at, again, within Canada, utilizing this opportunity where Canadian suppliers will have their US supply cut off because they're no longer competitive. There may be some free capacity and more advantageous commercial terms there. And then building this resilience by having optionality, no longer being focused on, hey, here's our suppliers because we've done an RFP and these are the two best deals. What else there, right? Building that resiliency and building the optionality. But you also have to become sharp and understand the cost impacts and what are the true impacts. And this is where, again, some of the best practices that we're seeing from outside of our organization and advice we're getting externally from consultancies is that you need to drive excellence in this cost and price management. What this means really is understanding the cost structure of the supplies, understanding the sub tiers of your supplies as well. So it's no longer just knowing, yes, this is coming from to me from the supplier X. Actually trying to understand where they're getting this, where the underlying tier 2, tier 3 supply chain implications may be. And then building that knowledge, and again, in prioritized manner, of course, you can't do everything for every single item you buy, but in prioritized manner, where you're spending most money, most sensitive items, most impacted items, and really building those should cost models yourself. What do you think it should cost, and utilizing that, and then engaging in the commercial discussions. Because yes, you will have to do a lot of commercial renegotiation from this, and there are opportunities will be coming up. And this is where, as we said in the beginning, the crisis can lead to opportunities. And this is where you can actually not only mitigate the negative impact, but you can actually find ways to create opportunities to reset the pricing, to reset the baselines in the different markets, because your supplies will be impacted as well. They will be losing market shares and their supply base. So exploring this and being bold and going out there can really pay out. Next slide, Jigger. I think we will bring this home with key takeaways. I'll start. Can you move to the next slide, please, with key takeaways?
Are you able to see the updated slide, the key takeaways?
No, it didn't move on my side, but I'll start anyway. Yeah, here we go. Yes, it shifted now, so you can bring it up. Again, it's all around being proactive, monitoring what's happening around you, anticipating the potential movements. A lot of things that we've done up to this point within Nova Chemicals and other companies I know in manufacturing have been ahead of the tariffs and anticipating the tariffs and doing a lot of prep work. One of the other tactics that or strategies that I wanted to mention is that many companies are establishing these tariff war rooms. And for example, in our organization, we have a war room which is more an enterprise level, looks at both sales side and buy side. But then when you move it down to a procurement supply chain, there's a smaller war room which is focused really on the supply chain and procurement aspects, and you man it up with people focused on trying to anticipate the impact and managing the impact. And then so again, continue on key takeaways. Look at the short-term impacts and risk, but don't forget about the long-term opportunities and strategies as well. Create resiliency and agility in your supply chain. I think that's the mindset that you need to be approaching this. Don't look at it just for today, look at it longer term. And then again, as we've said all along today, sometimes you can turn the risk into opportunities, and there will be plenty of these. You just need to approach it in the right mindset as well. So Cindy, over to you for the key takeaways as well on your side.
Really appreciate your perspective.
Cindy, you're on mute.
Thanks for the reminder. Just wanted to say thank you, Sasha, for sharing your thoughts and perspective. And it's always fantastic at events like this where we have both the public and private sector coming together to give a fairly sort of thoughtful discussions on different side of the coin. You know, for me, I want to drive it home to just some very, very simple takeaway here. The strategic leadership here really start with a mindset. And the mindset here is how are we as procurement expert, supply chain expert, talk and act in a time where our business area, stakeholder, and organization need us to take on that role. So, you know, some suggested elements to sort of thinking strategically here is, you know, reflect on the context of your organization. What are the business needs, the business requirements, but more importantly, what are the outcomes that are required during these times, but also long term. And I agree with Sasha, this is a fantastic opportunity to think through resiliency. You know, if we've done things, just because we've always done things a certain way, doesn't necessarily mean this is the time to continue. Or maybe it is the time to double down and say the things that we said would be best for the organization interest. It's time that we double down and we support and advocate for it. The other piece here is to use this as an opportunity to reposition and to really advocate for the importance of procurement function within government entities. I'm pretty sure, you know, as in Alberta, I've heard a lot in the news about procurement. We know procurement's important. We know that we are an institutional function that nobody talks about when everything is going fantastic, everything is going well, everything's going seamlessly. But when it doesn't, it is a really important piece that the public pay attention to it. So this is the time for us to position ourselves with confidence, with a voice of expertise and objectivity, and a voice that says, you know, we are a trusted advisor and trusted business partner, and we're willing to do anything. The innovation piece here is one that I want to stress. Innovation does not have to be things that are blue sky. Innovation here really comes into the practical day-to-day effectiveness, efficiency that can be had from enabling and empowering your team and your business partners. I believe that this is a fantastic time for us to really take home and think through how do we as leader celebrate, elevate, and really use this as opportunities to really see thoughtful, practical innovation and implement it for our team and our organization. And last but not least, I'm very proud. I'm proud of being a procurement specialist, a supply chain professional, and I'm proud of what we're doing. And I think this is a time that we have to take on that strategic mindset, but also be proud. Be proud for ourselves and our team and our organization. It's a good time to be where we are. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both for your valuable insights. And I really like the last part, Cindy, around being proud to be in this industry, being in procurement, being in supply chain. We have started to receive quite a few number of questions already. So we'll, as we dive right into the Q&A session, please continue submitting questions through the Q&A tool. If you are facing any difficulty, you can use the chat box to ask the question and we'll cover as many as we can. Starting off with the first, Hannah is asking, we are private labeling business, cosmetic and wellness business in Canada, who source our products from Canada, US, and China. What is the best strategy for moving forward, especially when 80% of our customers are in the US? I believe this question, Sasha, if you would be able to take on.
Yeah, I'll take that. So Hannah, thanks for the question. A couple of ideas there. One, I've mentioned this before. You probably want to look into this duty relief program for things that you're buying out of the US. but then you can try to classify that, hey, this will be then turned into a product that will go back to the US, and therefore you want to get that exemption that, hey, you're buying from the US, but it's the item will not stay in Canada, it will undergo a conversion, and then it will go back into US, and therefore apply for that relief. And then the other one is, I think we all should keep an eye on the Canadian government and local government's support programs for the businesses. Let's see what will unfold in that way. And we also, as an organization, also looking carefully at that, waiting for some news, because there may be some programs for the smaller businesses where if can show that they're severely impacted, they can get some government subsidies or reliefs or something like that.
Perfect. Thank you for highlighting that. I hope that answers Hannah's question. Next up, Randy is asking, I have heard that Quebec's government has mandated public institutions to start including 10 to 25% penalty on all US-based bids in RFX. What are your thoughts? I believe, Cindy, if you can take on this question.
Thank you for the question there. So, along with the countermeasures that have been imposed by the federal government, a number of provincial governments have also taken sort of at the provincial level countermeasures. And obviously this include, a myriad of actions. My suggestion to you, obviously, is it's important to sort of understand and continue to work within the regulatory environment in the province or the jurisdiction that you're in, because these provincial actions are very much regional. Each of the provinces are taking their respective sort of measures as they see fit from a political standpoint. As supply chain and especially as procurement professionals, my advice to you is to really reflect and balance the interests here. If there are specific directives that have been given at the provincial level, really dig in to understand the applicability of it. But also work with your business partners, because sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, substitution or significant increases in price or a lack of proponents to respond to a competitive offer really isn't an option. So when there are practical realities to consider, this is the time to do some hard work, which is to think through, on the one hand, directives coming from the sort of provincial jurisdiction, the business requirements and needs, and then think through your processes and your procedure, but also your exceptions or exemptions to see if there are opportunities to, at the end of the day, work with your business partner for the delivery or the continuation of delivery for operations requirements. So, this is a tough time, but as leaders, it's going to be an important time for us to think outside the box.
Definitely a great idea to be innovative in this space. Thank you so much for answering that, Cindy. Up next, the next question is from Irina. She's asking about the existing long-term contracts. Are tariffs a significant enough event that would allow to break existing contracts with lower or no penalties to renegotiate, diversify to other suppliers? I believe this question can be answered from a public sector perspective as well as the private sector perspective. So Sasha, if you can go ahead first, talk about private sector perspective on tariffs and the existing long-term contracts.
Yeah, so it again, and this is where you may want to seek some specific legal counsel advice, because it's a very nuanced, and it really depends on your contract provisions and the contract law. There are potential off ramps and the potential options that may be available, but again, it's very hard to give a blanket answer here. You really need to do a detailed evaluation and have the right legal counsel involved in this. So the answer is maybe, depends on your case. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I practiced law for over a decade, and even, you know, as a lawyer, I have to say it depends on the circumstances as well as sort of the potential consequences and penalties. I completely agree with Sasha. This is the time to work very, very closely hand in hand with your legal experts. You know, force majeure is really the area that I think you're talking about. But every provision in every contract may have a different shade, and thinking through those shades is a really good piece of advice, and to look to your counsel for their expertise.
Perfect. Awesome. Next up, the next question that we have is from Gurneet Kaur. She is asking, what if you are too small to request a partnership with the customer? In the end, it often turns into a race to see who can lower their prices the most. How can you protect yourself from this and maintain a margin that is sustainable? Sasha, would you like to take this on?
Yeah, let me take a stab at this. Thanks, Gurneet, for the question. Yeah, and again, many companies will find themselves in this situation, and it is very, very challenging. And it's right now, a lot of executives in boardrooms and in Canada are scratching their heads exactly around this question. But if I would turn this around a little bit towards supply chain procurement, because yes, executives will look at your value chain, your product mix, your customer mix, your markets. So this is the business and executive. But if we zoom in again, supply chain procurement, the way how we can make an impact, in my opinion, is you can go and start looking at how can you help to preserve your margin by aggressively pursuing optimization for your own expenses and for your own input costs and for your own fixed costs and SG&A costs. What I mean by that is, yeah, there's only going to be so much you can do, you know, in some of these supply agreements where the tariffs is going to hit you, or in your sales agreement, it's just going to hit you, right? You can do only so much. But what many organizations, and including my organization, will be called upon by executives is to go and find opportunities to optimize pricing and cost in other areas which may not be directly impacted by tariffs, but using the current situation and the current sort of burning platform case to go aggressively and turn every rock in other things which you may be sourcing locally, and go and pursue alternative strategies, taking things to the market, developing alternative supplies, but all towards decreasing the procurement spend and decreasing, well, finding more optimum solutions there. But this is where, again, I think this is a great time to be in supply chain procurement. Just like we had an opportunity to elevate the profile of supply chain procurement during the COVID times, in the time of the crisis, this is another opportunity like this. And when the spotlight will be on us, the spotlight will be on professionals like us. You just need to be comfortable in that spotlight and go and deliver and do your best in this. So these are my thoughts. Cindy, anything from you?
Thank you, Sasha. I think you covered it really, really well. From a government buyer standpoint, I completely agree with the question that sometimes it can feel daunting when you're a small seller to try to get the partner. But with times such as the one that we're facing right now, anything is up for grabs. This is a really good time for small, local, small, medium enterprises in Canada to really also put themselves on the map and really show sort of their innovation, their problem-solving ability to help government entities, government buyers to meet a lot of these challenging demands. So I actually don't think that being small is necessarily, an issue. In fact, I would suggest to you this is a really good time to put yourself in the map as a problem solver, as an ability to meet the challenging times.
And maybe I can add one more thing. You don't have to do it all by yourself. If you feel like you're a little bit, you've thought about everything you could think, reach out externally, reach out to community, reach out to consultants, reach out to experts. Don't try to solve it by yourself. There's a lot of creative thinking out there, and there's a lot of people thinking through the same and found some interesting solutions. I think I would promote, if you are one of the professionals and you stuck, reach out. Don't try to do it by yourself. There's somewhere someone who has probably found something that you could implement as well.
Thank you so much for wrapping it up in such a nice way. We are at the top of the hour, just past 2 minutes, so we'll wrap up the discussion here. Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll give a virtual round of applause to our speakers today, Cindy and Sasha. On behalf of Supply Chain Canada West and today's speakers, thank you for joining us, contributing in such a valuable discussion. We'll have a quick roll of the slides for the upcoming events that we have, so stay tuned on our events page. Have a wonderful rest of your day, guys. Take care.